Welcome to the video reviewing the user experience using consumerization of IT when we're using a Windows Slate. In this particular scenario, we're actually assuming a whole range of conditions are true. The first thing is this is a privately owned device. Second of all, this device is not established as part of the corporate network, so it doesn't come under any of the corporate IT policies. It's not controlled by group policies. It's not domain joined or anything of those lines. So it's really a pure consumer device that someone's gone and bought, and they want to be able to work remotely, and they want to utilize the device. So from a security point of view, it presents us with a whole series of challenges, and we don't really want data to be deployed onto this device, but we want to give the user the ability to work. So in this scenario, we've decided the best option is to offer this capability via a remote solution based around a virtual desktop infrastructure. So the QA organization have actually provisioned a set of virtual machines. These virtual machines are actually what we refer to as pooled virtual machines. So these are virtual machines that will be reset after each time they've been used. Windows 7 gives us a fairly unique user experience in this space, which we will hopefully try to illustrate. You can see here this highlights that we're running on an Acer Iconica tab device, so we are using a Windows 7 Slate, Windows 7 tablet device for performing this functionality. So the first thing, and this is a one-off exercise that we would need to do, is we would need to actually establish a connection between the Windows 7 Slate and our infrastructure. So because it is a Windows 7 infrastructure and a Windows 7 Slate, we have unique capability, and obviously we'd have this capability in Windows 8 as well. So this is the ability to actually define our connectivity back to our remote desktop services infrastructure. So the great thing about this is as you provision new services, whether they become apps, complete virtual machines or whatever, this user will learn about them, so they will appear on the user start menu automatically. So therefore making the whole user experience after initial setup much better. It also means that we can deploy items to the user without having them to do any reconfiguration once the initial configuration is done. So I'm just entering the URL that's required to allow us to connect back to the remote desktop services infrastructure. So this is going to connect to the remote desktop services website. This will prompt me for credentials. This will be a one-off exercise prompting for these credentials. However, when we establish the connection, each time we establish the connection, we will be prompted for credentials. So it's not we're embedding credentials into here, which is actually going to then allow a user to access a back-end application. They would still need to re-enter credentials to actually access the application. This is just the one that's used for the synchronization of the applications that are available. If the device was domain joined and you wanted to enable features like single sign-on, then all that would be capable as well. But obviously in this particular scenario, this might not be the best option. So as you can see, hopefully we'll get the credentials entered successfully in a moment, and we will then move on. So what we should see is a summary page at the completion of this process, identifying, just in my instance, that one remote desktop is available. So desktop's available 1. As it sort of shows in the picture, these then become available via the start menu. So when we go to the start menu, I could pin these to anywhere on the start menu that I wanted, but I've left them in the default remote app and desktop connection section. You see I have access to the pooled virtual machines. So I'll basically hit the virtual machine component, and this will start my remote connection. So this would be the day-to-day experience. Obviously this box could be fixed by mutual SSL, and again obviously the sign-on requirement here could be resolved through single sign-on if you wanted to. But in my scenario, where this device is completely owned by the user, it's not part of our corporate network, I would want to force this sign-on to occur to try and maintain security. And obviously this could be smart card and so on. So entering these credentials, hopefully what it should then do is it should then connect me to my virtual machine infrastructure. Now, one of the things that we'll hopefully see as part of this process is, as an organisation, I'm very environmentally aware. I'm conscious of resource. So one of the things that I've also ensured is that in my infrastructure, I've actually configured my virtual machines effectively to go to sleep if they're not being used after a period of inactivity. So we can actually see here the system is waking the virtual machine, and that could be a full boot, or it could be a machine being resumed from a save state, and then it will start to connect me through. Now, one thing I'd like to say at this particular point, my infrastructure that's running my virtual machine infrastructure is just running on basically a desktop PC, so the performance of this is not going to be exceptional, but hopefully it illustrates the point. So we then get back to the applications. This is a pooled environment, so these machines are unique, are not unique. They're a sort of common configuration, and when we disconnect, the configuration is thrown away. So what does that mean from the user having access to the applications they want? Well, one of the things that I could do is I could ensure that if it was only common productivity applications, they're built into the base configuration of the machine. Alternatively, again, because of the work I've already done in Configuration Manager, what will happen is this will be detected as a computer which is not Leanne's primary device, and therefore we will deliver applications on the fly, because again, as part of my base configuration, this machine has been registered with Configuration Manager, and it has a Configuration Manager client installed on it. It has the Application Virtualization client installed on it. So this machine will actually hopefully respond and react. Now you can see that the login's taking a little while. Again, because I decided to use pooled systems as opposed to personal devices, it has obviously got to go and build a complete user profile, and if you've got roaming profiles and login scripts, these sort of things can take a little while. One thing I would suggest is, from a Windows 8 point of view, look at this area. Things are going to change, as you will see. So you can now see I've actually got the installing software box appear in the bottom right hand corner. You can see that I've got the GIMP icon, so really just the act of logging in has now actually enforced that application to load, and the application is now installed. So through my virtual desktop infrastructure session, if I now go and launch the application, we will see the application will launch in a very similar way to what we saw when we was in the hot desk model. So now the application will hopefully launch. We'll get the splash screen fire up, and we'll get the progress bar loading the actual application. So again, we can see very clearly an alternative mechanism for delivering capability while still maintaining security within our environment. The user is working within our data center. We can secure the content within that data center. We can prevent them from being able to copy the content and take it away through policies for remote desktops, so we can ensure that things like drive redirection and those types of capabilities are not enabled, so they can't save content locally to their machine. So we can provide the security that's needed, and we can provide the facilities and the applications that are needed, regardless again of the device that you're connecting from, and we'll extend this beyond Microsoft devices shortly. So you can see here the application is just getting to the point of finishing to load. So again, really just wanted to illustrate, I've actually sort of designed this from a performance point of view in the worst possible configuration. So if you was doing this extensively for users, you would use personal desktops, so they always connect back to the same machine. You would use scenarios where the applications get installed in a more traditional way, so therefore the load time and so on is a bit quicker. But I'm just trying to show as much as possible the potential dynamism of the system, and if you haven't got endless resource, you might not be in a position where you could afford to have one personal VM for every user that needs to connect remotely, and therefore the pooled VMs allow you to basically have users balanced across a number of systems. And again, as you see, just obviously illustrating using touch capability, the fact that I was able to interact with the application. So complete that process. So I'll now go and sort of log off, and actually as the act of logging off, because of the way my Hyper-V VDI infrastructure works, the whole system is reset.